Welcome to IP Talk Radio. I'm your host, Don McCullough, and I'm here today with Victa McClelland, who's our VP of Technologies and Strategies for Internet Services here in Ericsson, Silicon Valley. Vic, welcome to IP Talk Radio.
Thanks, Don. It's nice to be here.
Great. One of the things that's really exciting about talking to you today is you've been here for about a year, come from being a CTO and a Tier 1 operator in Southeast Asia, and you've moved here to foster innovation around Internet services here in Silicon Valley. What are some of the surprises that you've had in the last 12 months as you've taken on this new role?
Yeah, I suppose moving from a role as a CTO where, you're very operational focused, spending a lot of time working on getting the network in place and managing the network. It's been a good transition across into Silicon Valley and into Ericsson where, I find that we're very, very engaged in the whole innovation process and the Silicon Valley startup process. So it's been a really, really good surprise, a pleasant surprise at how busy we are with that.
Cool. I think one of the things that we look at as a supplier here at Ericsson are the challenges faced by our customers. Looking back on your role as a CTO, what were some of the challenges, especially in bringing innovation and IP networking into the network and making it, real for your customer? What were some of the challenges you faced as a CTO?
Yeah, good question. I suppose perhaps the main thing was that it's a fundamental change for the operators to work with third parties in such a way. In the past, it's been really the responsibility or the onus on the operator to build their own services and applications and provide them to the customers, because that's the way that they've been able to build the relationships but also the closeness to the customer experience. And now with a lot of the over-the-top operators taking that role, that's been a big challenge for the operators to change the way of working so that they can embrace the working with the third parties into their own service products and services. So I think that's probably the main challenge. Some of the other more sort of technical challenges is things like getting the billing system in such a position so that you can actually, bill external services and things like that. So, lots of challenges, but probably the biggest thing is building that ecosystem, actually working with the third parties. And that's another reason why Ericsson's here in Silicon Valley being present with those third parties and can bring those sort of relationships to the operators.
Mm-hmm. Well, that must have been hard to go from doing it all to depending on other suppliers, vendors, third parties. Is there a cultural change that's going on in operators, do you think, from sort of a supplier-customer role to a more partner role, or what's going on from that side? Yeah,
definitely a cultural change, and I know there's a number of operators now that are setting up innovation directors or innovation parts of their company so that they can actually work with the third parties. In the past, they've worked with third parties more on an MVNO basis, so more on a big contract, big relationship sort of way. Now this is more working with lots and lots of smaller third parties to bring those sort of products and services into the domain within the operator. So it's really a very different way of operating, and it's in the past operators have done a lot of that themselves, and now they're having to rely on third parties to provide services to their customers, and that's probably the biggest challenge is how to balance the technology, bringing the products and services in, but also the relationship side. It's a big stretch for the operators to, if you like, allow third parties to be providing customer experience, and that's really a big change.
Well, good. And so as you remember that cultural change and see it happening, what's going on now that you're on the Ericsson side and the supplier side? How do you mirror that cultural change to a cultural change here? What are the things that are going on here in Ericsson and Ericsson Silicon Valley that you think serve that new way of doing business?
Yeah, thanks for that. It's a very good question. Firstly, I suppose being present here in Silicon Valley is a real good start. Working in amongst the internet companies. I mean, here in the Valley, we're probably less than half an hour drive from all of the software companies that are providing services on mobiles and the internet. So first of all, it's being present there and understanding it is probably the biggest thing. But then also, fostering that sort of degree of being able to bring those services into using the network assets and creating some sort of benefit through that for the internet companies to work with the operators. I mean, it's operators and internet companies really haven't had a tradition of working together, and we have to create that environment. We have to create ways and reasons for the internet companies to work with the operators. So I suppose that's probably the main thing that we're working on here is working out what sort of things the operators have got as assets to expose to the software companies that creates value both for the operators and the internet companies, rather than the internet companies thinking we just want a big fat dumb pipe.
Okay, so it's got to be win-win on both sides, and the value's got to go both directions. Tell me one or two things that when you foster that interaction between the internet companies and the operators, tell me one or two things that that come out or that you see as being interesting, maybe not so much to the operators as to the internet companies here in California.
Yeah, so I suppose two things. Firstly, we're working on identifying a number of network assets in what we call the smart pipe that might be useful for the internet companies to work with. And probably one thing that we think is of good value is quality of service. So working with the smart pipe to expose ways of prioritising traffic and setting priorities and quality of service levels on traffic. And we think that in an environment where the internet pipes are filling up fast, we think that that's a very essential thing for the future. And we've got a number of internet companies that are very interested in working with operators on that domain. It's still a hot topic with net neutrality and the FCC, but we do think that there is a big advantage there for both operators and internet companies and also the customers to work in that way. The other one, quickly, is we believe that there's a big advantage in working with internet companies, software companies, to optimize their applications working on the network. So within Ericsson, we've got this thing called the Smartphone Labs, who are working with a number of the bigger software companies from Silicon Valley to identify the behavior of their applications on the network. And we found that there are some really low-hanging fruit there, some big things that can be changed to really optimize it so that the customer gets the best experience out of the applications. Okay.
In just a short period of time, turn it around for me and tell me what the operators are hoping to get out of their interaction with the internet companies.
Yeah, good question. I'd say probably the operators, number one, are looking at ways of increasing their revenue because there has been a decline in margins and revenues of late. A lot of that additional revenue, if you like, is going to the over-the-top players. So number one, I think the operators are looking at ways of getting into the value chain with the over-the-top services. And the other thing I think is just keeping relevant with customers. In the past, I think it's very important for operators and over-the-top players to keep a relationship with the customers so that they can understand what it is to grow the best customer experience.
Well, Vic, that's pretty big stuff. I mean, you're talking about cultural change, you're talking about new business models. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. I'd like to thank you for conversation today, and maybe we'll continue it as we go forward.
My pleasure. Thanks, Don.
Okay. Well, I'd like to thank our audience, too, for listening in to another session of IP Talk Radio. I'm Don McCullough, your host. If you have any suggestions for future episodes or any comments on Vic McClelland's talk, please email us or contact us at iptalkradio@ericsson.com. You can find us on iTunes, on YouTube, and on ericsson.com/IPTalk. I've been your host, Don McCullough. and we'll talk to you next time on IP Talk Radio.